You'd expect a site called Nebraska Watchdog to be keeping an eye on things, right? Covering the political campaigns and looking out for the voter. What happens when the poll that you're supposed to be covering donated the money to fund and start up your site? Apparently, you sit out the campaign. Omaha businessman Pete Ricketts is one of the site's financial backers. He's also the Republican candidate for Nebraska governor. The goal here is to avoid an apparent conflict of interest, but in a way, aren't they missing out on the opportunity to do the watchdog journalism that they were created to do?
You could say that. You know, one of the things that I always try to caution people when they say the news is reporting this or the mainstream media is to try to define who is the news? Who owns the publication that you're reading? What do you know about the publication? I just had this conversation with a family member this past weekend about a new media startup that they had never heard of before. Find out who it is that you're watching and who's supporting it. The fact that this was a political candidate that was supporting this watchdog organization, when I hear the word watchdog, I think independent, not perhaps being funded by someone who's involved in partisan politics at all.
I will say, though, I do applaud them for acknowledging an obvious conflict of interest and saying they're staying away from it. I think people should know, and we talked about this some years ago on this program, but this isn't the only group like this. In fact, the man that's running for governor is a member of what's called the Franklin Center for Government and Public Integrity. It's a conservative, libertarian organization, and they fund a dozen of these. There's the Missouri Watchdog, yes, for example. And I'm all in favor of having anybody who will cover state government, because it gets covered so poorly by so few news organizations today. And as long as they're wearing their heart on their sleeve, we know who their funders are, and we can look at their stories and see if there's any bias. I'm okay with that.
Sure. It goes back to the issue of more information is better than less. It doesn't bother me at all that we have lots of different points of views. That's what we want to have. I just want to make sure that people understand from whence that information comes, that if it is in fact being labeled as unbiased or a watchdog organization, that is in fact what it represents, or that at least you know what it represents.